What's up, guys? 1-2 on the show yesterday. I actually wound up going 1-1-1 yesterday because as the lines moved around a little bit later in the morning, I was still watching those lines, hadn't taken the games yet. And I was realizing, oh crap, the market moved against me in what wound up being both of the two losers, or one was a push for me and the other was a loser. So I wound up taking the run line on the Kansas City Royals. So they actually pushed it by losing by one. That looked good early. They were winning 2-0 in the first inning, but then it was just a close game and they just weren't able to get there as far as the outright win is concerned. I was able to limit the damage of the run line on that one. I forgot to mention in the video yesterday that my play on the Pirates was going to be on the run line, and I forgot to explicitly mention that I thought it was an even stronger play because Oakland not only was returning home from a long road trip, but they were also an underdog. So when you have those teams that are returning home from the road trip and they're also an underdog, that tends to be an even stronger play to go against that team because usually that's a bad team, and Oakland is, but that just didn't get there, man. I mean, Boyle was walking a ton of guys, but he somehow only allowed one hit, and Pittsburgh just couldn't really score off of him. Very unfortunate. And then I won on Tampa Bay in a 1-0 game where it got really tense at the end, too. I think Milwaukee had second and third with one out in the bottom of the ninth and didn't score. One of their hitters struck out in that situation, I think, and then Tampa was able to finish off the game. So we got a good start from Pepio in that one. Bryce Wilson was way better than I expected. As it stands right now, I'm only going to have one play today, although I'll talk about the whole card here. I'll start with the NHL. 4 NHL playoff games. My Bruins are up first. Toronto, Boston. Boston coming back home up 3-1. And we know that that's not a safe lead in the NHL, especially when you're talking about the Boston Bruins. My Bruins, however, up from -135 to -160. So there has been market movement on the Bruins, some cash coming in on the Bruins, 77% of the tickets on them, 97% of the cash. I don't know if that cash percentage is quite accurate, although it does look like the line is moving up on them. I slightly agree with the Bruins side, I guess, maybe, but at this price, there's no way I would do it. And really all you see out there on social media is people basically saying that the series is already over and Toronto's dead and whatever. And even though the Bruins have had Toronto's number and they've only lost one game against Toronto all season, and I think that was the only game that they even trailed against Toronto this entire season, which was the one game they lost in the series, still, I don't know, man. I wouldn't say that it's over, although the Bruins should win, but you really never know. So we will see. I'm hesitant to call the series like a lot of people are there. Obviously, I'm rooting for the Bruins tonight, but we will see there. I think Toronto's just being a little bit undervalued at this point, though, and being probably counted out when they shouldn't quite be. Islanders, Carolina, that series is still going on with the Islanders up 3-1. The Hurricanes up 3-1, obviously. Going back to Carolina, a huge favorite, -235 up to -243. Looks like they have 95% of the cash, 99% of the tickets. I don't know that any of that is actually accurate, but I don't even really have that much of a lean on the side in this one, really. I mean, Carolina is obviously just a huge favorite. Is there really going to be value on the team that everybody knows is the better team? I don't know, although I do expect Carolina to win and put the series away there as they are the better team. Colorado-Winnipeg is interesting, as Colorado, after losing game one, has really just dominated the series, and I won on one of the games with Colorado. They've won 3 in a row now to take a 3-1 series lead. And I think debatably they were the better team in the one game they lost to in game one. That series is now shifting back to Winnipeg, where the team split the first 2 games. Colorado down from -120 to -116, but 77% of the tickets on them and 94% of the cash. So it looks like Colorado has the cash discrepancy on them, even though the line has moved down a tick on them. The books continue to tell you that Colorado's the better team, as they're a favorite at Winnipeg. I don't know, Winnipeg, though, I mean, they're in a must-win at this point. So they're a must-win team as an underdog at home is not really – that's not really a team that I'm going to want to fade, although I do think that Colorado is indeed the better team, as the odds makers are telling you, and they've basically dominated the series. Like I said, the series has been a bit higher scoring, which I think benefits Colorado as well. It's been more of a style game that Colorado likes. So we'll see what happens there. And then Nashville, Vancouver returns to Vancouver with Vancouver up 3-1 and getting to host 2 of the last 3 games if it gets to that. Vancouver, however, we see some kind of reverse line movement against the public Vancouver team, though, down from minus 118 to minus 117, 89% of the tickets and 88% of the cash. So they're very public. Looks like they have a little bit less of the cash, and the line has moved against Vancouver a bit. I just don't think I can do it, man. I don't think I can take Nashville here, even though Nashville debatably has been the better team in at least 2 of the games in the series, maybe 3. But in the most recent game they played, I was on Nashville. They were winning the game 3-1. As I mentioned the other day, I ranted about it yesterday. I think they were up 3-1 with 3 minutes left in the game, still up 3-2 in the final minute, and wound up blowing the whole thing, losing in overtime, and the worst collapse in the playoffs this season. Just unbelievable. After that, is Nashville really going to be able to travel out to Vancouver and get back up after that? That's what really gives me hesitation, even though the market indicators appear to be on Nashville. And these appear to be the best, actually, market indicators as far as how I view the market. The best indicators on the hockey slate today are actually on the Nashville side, with that reverse line movement, taking them as a bit of an underdog, with the books actually telling you still that Nashville actually might be the slightly better of these 2 teams here. It's just, I just can't do it after how they collapsed in that previous game. It's like, what is their mental state going to be? Is it going to hang them over into this game? So I just can't do it. And I will say congratulations to the Florida Panthers, who advanced last night with a win over Tampa, winning the series 4-1. So the winner of the Bruins-Toronto series will get Florida in the next series. So we'll see if that winds up being a rematch of last year's Bruins-Florida series, which was the first round series last year. And if so, will that give the Bruins a little bit of extra motivation in that series, with a little bit of revenge for having been eliminated by them last year? Not only eliminated, but the Bruins had that historically great season, best record in the history of the NHL, and wound up getting knocked out in the first round in Game 7 in that one, giving up the lead in the final 30 seconds of Game 7 at home, and then losing in overtime. Absolutely brutal finish, and having blown a 3-1 series lead, the Bruins, in that one. So if that winds up being the matchup, we'll see if the Bruins have that extra motivation from that. And I think the Bruins have actually swept the season series against Florida too, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, because the Bruins might not even finish the series against Toronto, man. Everybody seems to be writing Toronto off, and that tends to be a little bit dangerous. If you're the Bruins and you see everybody just saying, oh, you've already won the series, that tends to make you a little bit complacent. So that does worry me. NBA, 3 games, 76ers, Knicks, with the series returning to New York, with the Knicks up 3-1. Knicks have moved up from 3-4 on the spread here. It looks like there's a reverse line movement on the Knicks there. Public on the Sixers, 72% of the tickets, only 59% of the cash on the Sixers. So it looks like a legitimate money move coming in on the side of the Knicks against the road public underdog 76ers. It seems like the public still thinks, hey, this is a close series, close battle. 76ers are now in desperation mode because they're in a literal must win. Because if they lose this game, the series is over. So does that mean they're going to show up? I'm not so sure. I mean, the market indicators are indicating against it and indicating on the Knicks. And the Knicks also are certainly going to be motivated, as they do not want this game to have to go, the series to have to go back to a Game 6 in Philadelphia and then potentially have to go to a Game 7 where it basically becomes a single game elimination. Arguably, the 76ers have been the better team in some aspects in this series. They blew big leads in both of the first 2 games. However, the Knicks have consistently been the better rebounding team in the series. I think only losing the rebound edge in that one game that they lost at Philly. And the Knicks actually, possibly their best game was the most recent game where they won at Philly. This is a tough one for me to gauge, man. My slight lean would be with the market indicators to the Knicks, because I don't really have like a situational gauge otherwise on this one. I do think that the 76ers are not at full strength here. I think specifically Embiid looks like he's not at full strength. He looks like he's playing a bit injured, and apparently he's like playing with Bell's palsy, and you've seen some aspects of that in some of these games where it looks like he almost has like partial like facial paralysis or something, where you see like he like can't open or close like one of his eyes at some points. It's very bizarre. So I don't think Embiid is playing at 100%. I think he's probably far from that, actually, which is affecting the series as well. Knicks, I mean, we'll see what happens with the Knicks. I think maybe the way to play this would be to fade any Jalen Brunson props because he had such a historically good performance in the most recent game. I think he had the highest Knicks point total in Knicks playoff history with 48 points or something like that in the previous game. So taking a Jalen Brunson like points scored prop under might be the best option in this game. But we will see. Pacers, Bucks, or actually, I'm skipping. Oh, sorry. I'll say Magic Cavs. I'll talk about Magic Cavs next because they're actually before the Pacers Bucks game. Magic Cavs might be the most interesting of these games. Actually, this is a 2-2 series. Cavs down from 5 to 4.5 with juice at home. 69% of the tickets on them, only 58% of the cash. Looks like Cavs are public. Looks like they have a little bit less of the cash on them, and the line has ticked down on them a little bit, to the point where it's around where it was in the first two games in the series. The Cavs were somewhere in the vicinity of a 4-point favorite at home in the first two games. I kind of lean against the market in this one. The market indicator is indicating that there's reverse line movement against the public Cavs here and less of the cash on them, but I actually kind of lean against that. I kind of lean to the Cavs in this one. This has been a very home-centric series here. Both games at Cleveland were very low scoring. Cleveland won both by double digits. And then the games in Orlando were a bit higher scoring, and the Magic blew out Cleveland in both games. So now does that mean, is this going to be a zig, zag, zig spot? Kind of the prolonged zigzag, let's say, where Cavs took the first two at home, Magic took the first two on the road, and now is it the Cavs are going to adjust being back at home? I think maybe yes, the Cavs are the more experienced team and still are the slightly better team here. So I think that experience is going to come into play in now a tied series, close playoff series like this. Cavs looked good at home, and people might be forgetting that, although it looks like the public is still coming in on the Cavs here. That's kind of what I would go with there. The experience and the fact that Orlando is really not a very good road team. They're a much different team at home. That's been the case all season. They've been much, much better at home than on the road. So I kind of lean in that direction. I lean to the Cavs in that one on the side slightly because that's just what we've seen in the series so far. And then I do like the under in this one as well. The line is a bit low. The books have adjusted knowing that this is a 2-2 series. So in these game fives and game sevens and tied series like this, you tend to get defensive intensity, man, because those games are basically the series is on the line for both teams. Both teams show up, play intense defense. Both games in the series at Cleveland were very low scoring as well. So the books have adjusted this thing down. Looks like this one's gone down from 203.5 down to 201. I saw it at 191 a little while ago. It looks like some money is coming back in on the over here, but I don't agree with that. I like the under in this one. 69% of the tickets on the over, but 81% of the cash on the over. The over a little bit public. I don't agree with that, although the line's a little bit too low, maybe if you like the under here. Maybe not, though, now that it's gone back up a little bit to 201. I could see taking a shot on the under here and what we would expect to be a defensive, intense game, and the fact that both Cleveland games were very low scoring, even compared to the games that were in Orlando. So maybe that line's even a little bit too high based on the two games in Orlando. So I do like the under in that one for all those reasons. And I could see taking the Magic team total under the total as well after the Magic put up huge point totals in the two games in Orlando. They scored, I think, in the 110s and 120s in each of those games, whereas the games in Cleveland, they were in like the 80s or whatever. So there's been a huge differential in how the amount of points that the Magic have been able to score in these games between playing at home and playing on the road. The Magic have looked like a completely different team on the road, scoring nowhere near as much as they did in those home games. So Magic team total under. I don't know what the number is on that right now, but maybe that's skewed a little bit high too. So I could see that being the case. And then Pacers Bucks, I just don't even know what to think about this. This is the later game now. Pacers up from 3.5 to 4 with juice on the road. It actually looks like that's reverse line movement against a public home underdog Buck team. Bucks 76% of the tickets, only 67% of the cash. The Bucks, of course, the fact that the Pacers are 4.5 or 4 point favorite with juice on the road. That means the Bucks still have these injuries, man. Giannis still not back. Appears to me that Lillard is also not going to be returning for this game, not going to play in this game. The Bucks arguably maybe should have covered that huge number in the previous game. It was a big outlier performance from the Pacers from 3-point range, which really skewed the result in that game. I'm not saying the Bucks should have necessarily won that game, but I think the game, if you look at all the other stats in the game besides the 3-point shooting, the game should have been a lot closer. But does that mean the Bucks are just going to run out of steam at this point where they kind of are playing with a thin roster now without their two best players or two of their three best players? Are they going to finally run out of gas here? I don't know. I mean, the Bucks, you're still getting a pretty big amount of points now at home with a team whose lives are on the line here. So I would not want to lay the points at the Pacers in this one. And coming off that fluke 3-point shooting game from the Pacers, you got to expect a regression from them from 3-point range. So maybe not quite as good a game here. So I don't really agree with with the market indicators here on the Pacers side there. There's no way that I could do that. I actually would slightly lean to just what I tend to do is just say, I think we're just getting too much value in this line. You got a home underdog, with their entire season on the line. Now, you're probably going to have to get an effort out of them in that game. It's a 3-1 Pacers lead in the series, so slight lean would be to the Bucks. So I actually lean against the market in those two games. Interesting. And I guess that's going to do it for the NBA. Congratulations to the Denver Nuggets, who completed the series yesterday. We're able to advance over the LA Lakers in another unexpectedly close game, I would say, where it looks like the Nuggets didn't really turn it on until later in the game again in the second half, similar to basically every game in the series so far. But the Knicks, they really got, I would say there was biased reffing in that game, and the reffing favors LeBron. I think the refs might even wanted that series to get extended so that you get more. I mean, there's a lot of money involved there. You get a lot more money if that series gets extended and you have more games that wind up getting televised and more games for people to attend and whatever. You want LeBron to not get eliminated for as long as possible. So is there a little bit of bias there with the reffing? I think it's kind of obvious that there was, because the free throw discrepancy was just absolutely outrageous. With the Lakers, I think, getting 20 more free throw attempts in the game or something like that. And that was really the difference in the game. That was the reason why Denver didn't cover the spread. Denver had fewer than 10 free throw attempts in the entire game. The Lakers had, I think, 26 or 27. It's just completely insane. That was the entire reason why the game was as close as it was. Definitely some bias officiating, because usually, I mean, you almost never see that with a road team, although it is LeBron and the Lakers, so maybe that's why. But you usually never see that much of a discrepancy in favor of the road team as far as the reffing and the amount of free throws is concerned. Whatever. We move on to MLB, where I have my only play of the day in the MLB here. There's not much I like on this Major League Baseball card, to be honest. I'm looking at it and I'm just there are just too many games that I find to be a little bit unreadable. Games where I could see arguments for both sides, or maybe even both sides on the total. I do think that there are pitching mismatches to some degree in Yankees Baltimore, with Nestor Cortez being the better pitcher over Dean Kremer, although Kremer has actually been unexpectedly good this season. Cortez has been even better, and I think he's just the better team and has better numbers against Baltimore than Kremer does against the Yankees. It does look like the Yankees flipped to the favorite there and have more of the cash on them, even though they're public. They're also in a bounce back spot from getting shut out by Baltimore last night. So I lean to the Yankees in that one. And I do lean to Pittsburgh to bounce back against Oakland. I think that's a mismatch as well with Mitch Keller. That line has moved up quite a bit on the Pittsburgh money line as a road favorite there against a bad Oakland team. Mitch Keller, the better pitcher, though, and has better numbers against Oakland than Alex Wood does against Pittsburgh. Alex Wood pitching for Oakland has pretty bad numbers against Pittsburgh. So I do think that those are starting pitching mismatches in those. The game I'm actually going to be on is a full game total, even though I've finally lost a couple of full game totals. I think I'm now, I don't know, somewhere in the vicinity of 13-2 on full game totals, something like that. Still very good. It's been one of my best things I'm playing on an over in this one. My stats on overs are a little bit worse. I think I'm 2-1 in full game overs. But I'm going to the over where I think you actually get value, and I think you get some misleading starting pitcher ERAs in this one. That's the Philly and LA Anaheim game. I'm taking this one over the total. It looks like it's at 9 right now, I think is where you get the better price. It looks like it's kind of gone down from 9 juice to the under to 8.5 juice to the over. So it looks like the line has moved down just slightly in some of the books. But the over is public, but I do see more of the cash on the over right now as well. But I don't agree. Oh, no, excuse me. I do agree with that. Excuse me. So it looks like the line has moved down a little bit from where it was very slightly. But I like the over in this one. And it does look like the cash discrepancy is on the over, even though the over is public at 80%. I don't know if there are that many recreational bettors coming in and saying, oh, let's play the over in the Philly Anaheim game here. I don't know. It might be a game that's a little bit under the radar. Especially with the NBA playoffs going on, there might not be as many eyes on some of these baseball games. One that's at 9:38 p.m. Eastern, one of those weird baseball start times. 80% of the tickets on the over, 95% of the cash, however, on the over. So it does look like there is some agreement on the over on this one. The best that you can do right now, I think, is you can get over 9 at even money right now. 9 is a key number, though, but it looks like the 8.5 at best is juiced at -115 right now. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with playing it that way as well. 9 is a key number, as I keep saying, because when you have a tied game late in the game, of course, that one extra run is what breaks the tie and wins the game for one team or the other. So the 7, the 9, the 11, those are kind of the key numbers in baseball. A little bit. So a little bit of a difference between 9 and 8.5. But I think at 9 plus 100, I think it's a little bit better than the 8.5 minus 115. Although I don't know. We'll see how it shapes up there. We'll see which number I want to play. But generally, I like the over in this one because I think you have two pitchers who have misleading results so far this year. Spencer Turnbull for Philly, has been quite good this year. I mean, there's nothing to really dislike about his numbers so far this season. 1.33 ERA, 0.85 whip. He's been very good this season. 30 strikeouts in 27 innings, only allowing 13 hits. But he has walked 10 guys, struck out 30. So the strikeout number is good. The walk number is a bit too high, man. But the amount of hits is just insanely low. He's been almost unhittable. But a lot of that was the fact that he had a one-hit 7-inning performance against the White Sox. And we know the White Sox are not a very good offense. I mean, he hasn't faced like the heaviest hitting offenses so far. The best lineup that he's faced has probably been the Cincinnati Reds. He faced them twice. They won one of those games, lost one. He only allowed one earned run over the course of both of those two starts. So that is good. And he got a 15-3 strikeout walk ratio in those two games. So that is good. And then his worst performance was against Pittsburgh, where that was the one where he didn't even make it 5 innings, walked 4 guys in 4 innings, and gave up 3 hits, 3 runs. So that was a bad performance. Other than that, he beat St. Louis and the White Sox. Not exactly the best hitting offenses, I don't think, there. So he hasn't really faced like a total gauntlet, although, of course, LA Angels, they're not a very good hitting team either, although versus the Angels, they haven't seen him that much. They've only seen him for 11 at bats, where only 3 of their hitters have seen him before, but they have good numbers off him, man. They're 4 for 11 off him lifetime with 2 doubles. He has 4 strikeouts and 4 walks against him, so that ratio is not good either. So the LA Angels hitters who have seen him before have hit him, and they've been able to get on base against him. A 364 batting average, 533 on base percentage, and 1,079 OPS. So his stats, albeit in a limited sample size, are pretty bad against the Angels hitters that he's faced before. And I think his stats this season are just misleading, man. Like, did he all of a sudden just figure it out when he's 31 years old just because he's on a new team now on Philly instead of Detroit? I mean, it's possible that the coaching does something that changes mechanics, but he's obviously not as good as what he's been so far this year. 1.33 ERA and 0.85 whip. He's not that good. On his career, he has a 4.29 ERA and 1.32 whip. So those stats significantly worse than what we have this year. And 129 walks in 329 a third, 310 strikeouts. So strikeout rate on his career a little bit lower than what we see this year too. And the walk numbers, not exactly great either. So I do expect kind of a regression out of Turnbull as the season continues. So I think that we're getting maybe a misleadingly low total on this one because of things like that. And because on the other side, we have Tyler Anderson. I think both of these guys, they're both in their 30s, man. And they both just have, I think, they've had a good start to the season so far, but it's a bit misleading because you expect them to both regress a bit based on their career numbers. Tyler Anderson, similar to Turnbull, his situation, he's got a 1.78 ERA this year, 1.05 whip. That's all good. He has 21 strikeouts in 30 and a third innings, so not a great strikeout rate. And he's walked 13 batters, so that's concerning. That's a bad strikeout walk ratio, man, 21 to 13. That is kind of a low strikeout rate and too high a walk rate. That walk rate is very high. And he's only allowed 19 hits somehow. So, again, both of these pitchers, they've allowed so few hits that you expect them to regress. You would have to expect them to regress a bit from what they've been doing and not remain as unhittable as they've been. Anderson has also allowed 4 home runs, which isn't that great this season. And he hasn't faced like the best lineups either, really. He faced Miami. They can't hit it at all to start the season. Tampa Bay, not a very good offense either. He also faced Cincinnati and did okay against them. His walk numbers have been pretty bad in all these games, though, really. He's walked at least 2 in every one of those games, except for Tampa, where he walked 1. And in each of his most recent 3, he's been worse, really, with the walks. He's walked at least 3 in each of the most recent 3 games in not a very good performance against the Red Sox, where he only went 4 and a third, gave up a couple home runs, 3 walks, 4 hits, 3 earned runs. Bad performance in that game against the Red Sox. Had a decent outing against Cincinnati, but his strikeout walk ratio was bad. He just somehow really kept their hits down, didn't allow many runs in that one. And then against Baltimore in his most recent game, not the best performance. 4 walks in 5 innings, although he did have 7 strikeouts. He did allow 4 hits as well, so 8 earned base runners in that game. Somehow got out of there, only allowing 2 earned runs, which with that amount of base runners, you kind of expect that he would have allowed more. So I think he's a bit worse. And looking at his career stats, very similar to Turnbull, man, where both these guys have ERAs in the 1 range so far this season, which again is misleadingly low. It's unsustainable. You got to expect a regression from both these teams, from both these pitchers. I mean, both of these guys in their 30s, and Anderson, unlike Turnbull until this year had his entire season was on Detroit. Tyler Anderson has been on several different teams. He hasn't really stuck with a team. He was in Colorado at the early part of his career for 4 seasons, and then after that, he's bounced around and hasn't really stuck with the team for more than a season until Anaheim. But he wasn't even good for Anaheim last year. He had almost a full season as a starter for Anaheim last year, and his ERA last year was 5.43 with a 1.49 whip. Terrible stats last year. 119 strikeouts in 141 innings. That's a very low strikeout rate. 64 walks. That's way too high. 1.9 strikeout walk ratio. Bad numbers last year on his career, similar to Turnbull, 4.27 ERA, 1.27 whip, only 820 strikeouts and 973 and 2/3. So he's not a good strikeout guy. 298 walks, a bit high, 2.8 strikeout walk ratio, not the greatest strikeout walk ratio. So again, I'm expecting regressions for both these pitchers, and his stats against Philly, really not good. And this isn't a large sample size. Phillies hitters have seen him before. They're 27 for 72 off him lifetime. 5 doubles, 3 triples, 6 home runs, 7 walks. He has a 14-7 strikeout walk ratio, so that's not even good either. That's a 375 batting average, 430 on base percentage, and 1,208 OPS. So they have really been good against Anderson in a pretty large sample size. He's been basically shelled by Phillies hitters. So I think in both of these cases, you're going to see a regression from both of these starting pitchers here. So I like the over in this one. And then yesterday's game, yes, it did go over, but I think we're getting a little bit of value on the total here just because these pitchers have misleadingly low ERAs. The total in yesterday's game was set at 8.5, so very similar to this game. So this game, it is up a little bit from there. So the odds makers do still know, these pitchers probably aren't as good as what their season stats look, because the odds makers threw up a total that's slightly higher than what it was yesterday, but probably not high enough. And yesterday, at least one of the pitchers, I think, is an okay pitcher with Sanchez. against Canning yesterday. Canning, not a very good pitcher, although neither pitcher did that great. Both bullpens got used yesterday a bit, with the Phillies using 3 of their relievers, although maybe not necessarily their best relievers, but it was a close game, man. It was a 6-5 game, so it did go over. But that was a close game towards the end there. And LA of Anaheim had to use a bunch of their better relievers, the back end of their relief staff there. They had to use their bullpen for 4 innings. They used a couple of their the back end of their pen there, using their closer as well, Estevez, to get the save. And because it was a close game, the Phillies had to roll out a couple of their late inning relievers as well, and use 3 of their relievers. So the bullpen situation, I don't really think is the best for either of these teams either. So that's the only play today, man. It's going to be the over in the Phillies and LA Angels of Anaheim game. That's going to do it for me, man. Have a good one. That's Philly, LA Angels over, whatever I said. Either over 9 or over 8.5 at some price, depending on which one you perceive or you believe to be the best value out of those options there. Peace.